Welcome to VNT. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. The Supreme Court has delivered a landmark decision, sharply limiting presidential authority over tariffs and redefining the boundaries of executive power in economic matters. In a move that has sent shockwaves through Washington, the court reaffirmed Congress's constitutional power over taxation and trade, emphasizing the importance of checks and balances in the American system of government. On October 6, 2025, the court struck down tariffs imposed by former President Trump, ending years of legal battles and economic uncertainty for businesses, workers, and consumers across the country. The justices ruled that the president cannot unilaterally impose broad-based tariffs without clear, explicit authorization from Congress, underscoring that executive orders cannot override legislative authority in matters of trade. This decision recalibrates the balance of power, closing the door on unilateral economic policymaking and strengthening Congress's role for the future. Lawmakers are now expected to play a more active part in shaping trade policy and responding to global economic challenges. The ruling sends a clear message: the power to tax and regulate trade belongs to Congress, not the executive, regardless of who occupies the White House. This principle is now firmly reinforced for future administrations. Legal scholars and policymakers now face a new era, as the court's decision reshapes the boundaries of presidential power and global commerce. The implications will be felt not only in Washington, but in boardrooms and markets around the world. To understand the Supreme Court's decision, we must look at why Trump's tariffs were so controversial. Tariffs are taxes on imports, used to protect domestic industries and raise revenue. Trump's administration used them aggressively, targeting countries like China, to address trade imbalances and alleged unfair practices. The tariffs expanded rapidly, affecting hundreds of billions in goods and sparking a global trade war. Critics argued these measures hurt American businesses and consumers by raising prices and disrupting supply chains. The legal justification relied on broad interpretations of laws like the IEEPA and Trade Expansion Act, claiming national security grounds. Ultimately, the sweeping use of these powers set the stage for a constitutional showdown in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court's ruling was decisive. The president had overstepped, imposing tariffs without clear congressional approval. The majority opinion emphasized that the power to tax and regulate foreign commerce is a core responsibility of Congress. The court rejected the idea that emergency powers statutes like IEEPA grant the president a blank check to impose broad tariffs. Dissenting justices warned that limiting executive flexibility could hinder swift responses to international threats, but the majority held firm. The decision immediately invalidated the legal basis for the tariffs, forcing their removal and setting a new precedent. The ruling underscores that no branch, including the presidency, can bypass constitutional limits, especially on taxation. It's a powerful reminder of the judiciary's role in enforcing the separation of powers. At the heart of the case was a fundamental question: does the president have the authority to impose tariffs, or is that power reserved for Congress? This issue goes to the core of how the United States government divides power between its branches, especially when it comes to economic policy and the ability to shape the nation's trade relationships. The answer would have far-reaching consequences for the balance of power in Washington. Challengers argued that Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution gives Congress exclusive authority over taxes and tariffs. They insisted that only Congress, as the branch closest to the people, should have the power to levy taxes or impose broad tariffs that affect the entire economy. This constitutional provision, they said, was designed to prevent unilateral executive action in matters that could impact millions of Americans. The Supreme Court's majority leaned on the major questions doctrine, a legal principle that requires clear and specific congressional authorization for executive actions of vast economic or political significance. The doctrine acts as a safeguard, ensuring that the most consequential decisions remain in the hands of lawmakers, not just the executive branch. The court found the IEEPA's language too vague to justify sweeping tariffs, distinguishing between targeted trade actions and broad economy-altering measures. While the law gave the president some flexibility in emergencies, the justices said it did not grant the power to fundamentally reshape the nation's trade policy or impose new forms of taxation without explicit congressional approval. Supporters of the tariffs claimed presidents have long managed trade flexibly, pointing to historical examples where executive action was necessary. However, the court drew a line at creating new taxation regimes, emphasizing that such sweeping changes must come from Congress, not the president acting alone. The decision signals a judiciary more willing to enforce statutory limits on presidential power, especially in economic matters. It reflects a growing trend of the court stepping in to clarify the boundaries between the branches of government, particularly when major economic interests are at stake. It's a significant application of the major questions doctrine to foreign affairs, reinforcing Congress's primary lawmaking role. The ruling underscores the importance of legislative clarity and the need for Congress to speak directly when authorizing major policy shifts. Ultimately, the ruling reasserts that only Congress can authorize major economic interventions, preserving the constitutional balance and ensuring that decisions with sweeping impact remain in the hands of the nation's elected representatives. The end of Trump-era tariffs will reshape the American economy in profound ways, creating both winners and losers across a wide range of industries and communities. This policy shift signals a new chapter for American trade and business. Businesses that rely heavily on imported materials, such as automakers, construction firms, and electronics manufacturers, will likely see their costs drop significantly. This reduction in expenses could allow companies to lower prices for consumers, making everyday goods and big-ticket items more affordable for American families. The removal of tariffs could help ease inflationary pressures, giving households more purchasing power and financial breathing room. Lower prices at the checkout and reduced costs for essential goods may help families stretch their budgets further. However, domestic industries that were once shielded by tariffs, such as steel and aluminum producers, now face renewed global competition. This could lead to difficult adjustments, including possible job losses and factory closures in some regions. On the other hand, retaliatory tariffs from other countries are likely to be lifted, opening up new opportunities for American exporters. This is especially good news for farmers and manufacturers who depend on access to global markets to sell their products. The overall impact will depend on how quickly markets, businesses, and workers can adapt to the new trading environment. Investors and policymakers will be watching closely as the economy adjusts. While some sectors may struggle to compete, the broader economy could benefit from increased trade, new investment, and relief for consumers. Over time, these changes may foster innovation and growth. Ultimately, the decision marks a major shift in U.S. economic policy, with far-reaching consequences that will be felt by businesses, workers, and families across the nation for years to come. America's trading partners have welcomed the Supreme Court's decision, seeing it as a return to stable, rules-based trade. The ruling paves the way for countries to lift retaliatory tariffs, reopening markets for U.S. exports. International organizations like the WTO view the decision as a reaffirmation of multilateral trade norms. The move signals that future U.S. trade policy will be more predictable and less subject to unilateral executive action. Foreign governments may now negotiate with greater confidence, knowing that sudden tariff hikes are less likely. The decision reassures allies that America's checks and balances remain strong and reliable. The Supreme Court's ruling is a powerful affirmation of America's system of checks and balances. By striking down the tariffs, the court reasserted Congress's constitutional authority over taxation and trade. The decision serves as a reminder that major economic policies must go through the legislative process, not executive decree. It may prompt Congress to be more assertive in defining and overseeing presidential powers. The ruling restores a sense of constitutional order, ensuring that emergency powers are not used to bypass normal lawmaking. Ultimately, it's a victory for the rule of law and the structural limits on government power. This Supreme Court decision sets a lasting precedent, shaping how future presidents approach economic and trade policy. Unilateral tariffs based on broad emergency powers are no longer viable. Explicit congressional approval is now required. Congress may revisit and clarify laws like the IEEPA, setting clearer boundaries for presidential action. The ruling encourages future administrations to work with Congress, fostering more durable and widely supported policies. It marks a recalibration of presidential power, guiding it back to its constitutional limits. The decision will be remembered as a pivotal moment in the ongoing debate over the balance of power in American government. By reaffirming Congress's central role, the court ensures that major economic decisions reflect open debate and democratic consent.